and greetings. This is a live Twitch stream on how to stream from Linux, Ubuntu Linux specifically. Last week, somebody had requested that I do a video about this topic, and so I said, sure, why not? I just reinstalled Ubuntu Linux on my laptop too, so I'm at the latest version, 16.10, and I tested OBS earlier this week and it works pretty much straight out of the box, but there's a little bit of setup and some caveats you still want to keep in mind. OBS is open broadcasting software, and just recently they released their multi-platform edition, which was supported for Windows, Mac, and Linux, which is fantastic because like now anybody can stream from any platform. Now there was streaming solutions for the three platforms, and specifically Linux. There were some command line things that you could do from Linux to initiate a stream, but it was really tricky to get set up, and you had to know some low-level command line utilities and options and a million different configuration parameters that everybody had to, you had to get just right, or the stream wouldn't work at all. And even if you did get it just right, it was no guarantee that it was going to work. There was a tool called Simple Screen Recorder. I'll do a little bit of a search for that really quick here. Simple Screen Recorder was about as close to, yeah, all right. Go to the main web page here. So I'm not going to get too much into this because Simple Screen Recorder is a very low-level utility. It did have a front-end interface, as you can see here. This looks pretty familiar if you've ever done, looked at the same stream settings as OBS has. The video input, audio input, blah, blah, blah. Simple Screen Recorder did have some limitations. It did not support webcams, so it could not record video from coming from your camera. And as a result, you had to use a third-party utility. And that was actually kind of hard to find because the only third-party utility I found that could just output a display from the webcam onto the screen was this Python tool that hadn't been updated in 5 years, and it was kind of sketchy. It worked, but yeah. So that was not a fun tool to use. Also, Simple Screen Recorder had issues with microphone sources, so it took probably about a couple of weeks of tweaking the microphone settings at the operating system layer in order for Simple Screen Recorder to appropriately correctly record the microphone. Now OBS platform came along and all those problems went away. Effectively, you can install OBS one of two ways. You can just do OBS multi-platform. I'm not going to post these links directly into the stream or anything along those lines. This is just straight up Google. That's their see, is it okay? All right, so this did bring us to the right place. We had to click on the home button, and this is where the downloads are. You can download it this way. If you click on this link, make sure you have Studio. And it tells you how to do this. So instead of okay, so they did change this a little bit. This used to be a Debian package, but now they've actually give you instructions on how to add the repository. Now, if you're running an older version of Ubuntu 14.04, for one thing, you should be upgraded from that because I think if that's not unsupported it will be pretty soon. That's an old version of Ubuntu. But if you have Ubuntu installed, make sure that you install ffmpeg first, and it tells you how to do that. If you are running a newer version of Ubuntu, you don't need to install ffmpeg, but you still need to add the repository. I'm sorry, you don't need to add that repository because this is the one I wanted. So this repository is the one that you want to install. So if you're running 14.04, run these two commands. If you're running something newer, run these two commands. You can skip the first two. And sudo apt-get repository, and I'll just copy and paste these utilities. I'm not going to run them on my machine because I already have them installed. But you can see what they look like a little bit better than what's on my screen here. So sudo apt-get repository, bam, that guy right there. That adds the OBS Studio third-party repository to Ubuntu, so it basically gives Ubuntu another place to check for any additional packages. If you run that, if I've run that, it'll probably come into an error saying you already have this installed. So I'm not going to run this command, but in case that's what you want to run, that's the command that you have to run. So I Control C, so it doesn't actually run that command, but I'll just leave it up on the screen there. And then you run this command down here. Now, every time you do add a repository, it says just do an apt-get update, but I also like to do an apt-get upgrade because sometimes, when you install this newer version of Studio, there's a small possibility there might be a dependency. So you might have to run just an upgrade or a dist upgrade as well too. But this command should be sufficient in most cases to get yourself a working version of OBS. And again, I'll just copy and paste it here. Boom. I'm not going to run it because we already have it installed. Yeah. And when you get it running, every time I run an apt-get command, I always make sure that, especially since we did an apt-get update, I always like to do sudo apt-get dist upgrade. And of course, it'll ask me for my password. I think I entered in the wrong password. I did. Yep. Did I do it again? There we go. All right. And I just ran it like 20 minutes ago. It's before the stream, so I don't have anything up. But I have OBS installed. And in fact, I have it running as we speak because I'm running a stream. So let's bring that up. Now this is going to get a little crazy because I have OBS effectively recording itself. So you can see a little miniature OBS screen within the OBS screen, and it goes down into infinity. Well, down to a pixel, but so streamception essentially, and you can tell this looks very similar. I'm going to go ahead and maximize the screen. Whoa, that's crazy, isn't it? We're going to just leave that up. I know it looks a little crazy, but this will help make it a little bit easier to see the controls or whatnot. And here, this is very similar. Anybody who's run OBS on other platforms, this looks very familiar. I have my cam. You can see the red border selecting it because I selected that. And in this case, I have my desktop. So my desktop is basically effectively being recorded right now. If I go into the settings for the desktop, very simple. You have your two screens. I have two screens, my laptop screen and my monitor screen. Capture cursor, sure, why not? Because I'm playing a game, so you want to see where I'm clicking and stuff like that. And there's some advanced settings, and you select your X server. And I'm not going to go into that. If you know Linux and you know the advanced settings, how to set this up, you do have that option of selecting a separate X server on your machine in order to perform your stream on. That's something very few people do. I did do that once many years ago, but I haven't done that in such a long time I couldn't even tell you how to do it now these days. So we'll just ignore that. We're going to cancel out of that, and we're back into the screen again. So many streams. Okay, and laptop cam, same deal. We'll go into here. Now notice here my laptop camera is pointing this way when I open up the screen here. Well, it's just like with any other OBS. To get it pointing in the other direction, right click, transform, flip horizontal. And you can do other things here, rotate, you can fit the screen, stretch the screen, or move it to the center of the screen. This is typical OBS stuff. So if you've worked with OBS platform on other platforms, this is all the same. Going back to our actual webcam configuration, I just have the one camera, so the device is just basically like that. Video format is, yeah, I've never really played with that. I just stick with the default. I suppose you could play around with it. What happens if I do? it doesn't seem to do anything. I'll just kind of keep it back to where it was. Resolution and frame rate I leave unchanged. Buffering, sure, why not? Yeah, we'll go ahead and cancel. And so that's that. Now there are some. I'm going to get into some Linux specific things because Linux doesn't really behave. It does a good job of being a desktop environment these days, but there's still some things about it you got to consider. I have a USB plugged in, USB headphones and microphone plugged in. Pretty standard setup. This thing's like was like 20 bucks at the local, electronics store or something like that. Nothing really fancy. And as far as Ubuntu Linux goes, it's just plug and play. You just plug it in. Linux kind of goes, oh, there's a device. Oh, it's an audio device. Oh, it's a microphone device. Okay, boom, configured. You're done. So Ubuntu Linux is pretty good about that. You do kind of want to watch out though, because by default, even though it automatically configures it, it doesn't set it as the default. So if you set that up and then you start browsing the web or looking at YouTube videos, the first thing you're going to notice is that all of your stuff is still going through through your main speakers. So there's a utility out here called Pulse Audio, and it should come with your installation. And it's probably under multimedia here. Depending on the desktop environment, I'm running XFCE, so it might be a little bit different. But if you can find Pulse Audio Volume Control, it might be under your system menu. It could be under a different couple of different places, but this is the guy that you want. I can pull it up. Notice that your Chrome playback, those are the different playbacks. And once you set this up once, it will remember it again in the future. The exception being is if you unplug your headphones, start playing some audio, then it'll switch the default back to the main speakers, and so you might have to go back in here and reset that. But here, my headset H390 analog stereo. Yeah, just make sure that this is set to that. And we're going to show you what happens when you don't do that. So in here, my mic has already been set up. I'm clicking on the stream and not on the actual control. That's hilarious. So if we go to properties, make sure that your device is set up to point at the correct one. So I have a built-in microphone, which is horrible because there's a fan inside my laptop that drowns everything out. You can't even actually hear anybody talk with that microphone. It's horrible. It's ugly. I hate it. So don't ever use that microphone. I use the headset. Make sure that it is pointed at the headset. All right, click on cancel. It's again pretty straightforward. If you use OBS multi-platform on other operating systems, same deal. Desktop audio, just make sure, go to properties. Again, just make sure that you're listening to the right thing. I want the sound from my headset, the thing that I'm listening to right now, to be the guy that gets sent to the stream. I don't want the built-in audio because oftentimes I won't have anything going to that channel because everything's going through my headset, especially when I'm streaming. So make sure that the device is in fact the headset that is going to be for what your desktop audio is set up to. Primarily because, like, especially if you have a microphone, if the sound's coming off your desktop, it'll get picked up by your microphone, and then you can have that echo issue, and it doesn't sound very good. You want to avoid that if at all possible. All right. So other than that, if we go through some of these other ones, other settings here, pretty straightforward. General, this is all basically the defaults. I didn't touch this at all. Now this one I can't touch because I'm actually in the process of streaming. So I can't really change any of these. But stream type, services, Twitch, stream key, all that stuff, that is essentially identical to how you configure OBS on all the different platforms, and it's the same deal. You stream type, streaming services Twitch, which is like has a bunch of built-in defaults to make your stream optimize. You select your server. In my case, since I'm in the Midwest, I picked the one in Chicago, and of course your stream key. That stream key that you're never supposed to show anybody, no matter what. Here for audio or output, I have my video bitrate set to 3000, my audio bitrate set to 160. So that pushes it a little bit higher than 3,000. Um, Here's the thing too. A lot of places will actually recommend that you use MPEG 4. Um, and for Twitch, if you're just streaming for Twitch, I believe that the recommended is to do X264. Um, in fact, it doesn't even look like I have an option because I may not have installed MPEG 4. So I've always used X264 for the encoder, and it works for Twitch. YouTube, it won't. I believe you need to have MPEG 4, and I'm going to probably do another YouTube or tutorial video on how to stream to YouTube from Linux as well too. In this case, we'll need to install or stream to intermediary streaming service called Restream.io, which will then restream the stream to YouTube, because YouTube streaming is we won't go to in this video. It's horrible. It's bad. I don't record my stream, so I just leave these as default. Sample rate, these are pretty much the default. Desktop audio device, see, we can configure these here as well too. And then these are the headset settings. Sample rate 44.1, channel stereo. Yeah, it. But I didn't even have to touch any of this, but this is kind of like what you want your stream to look like, or the audio settings. Video, base canvas. This is just the size of my monitor. That's basically all it is. It's currently active, so turn off any outputs to change video settings. So yeah, I don't even worry about this. It's fine. Hotkeys, sure, whatever. Advanced, great. I don't think I've ever actually like changed anything in here. Um, there is an enable advanced coder settings. Enforce streaming service bitrate limits. Yep. Um, so yeah, I think, yeah, because since Twitch is a predefined service here, you don't really need to mess around with like buffer settings or anything along those lines. That's already automatically configured by OBS. It used to be like you had to make sure that you had a 10 sec or 2 seconds interval to make sure that your stream was compatible with mobile devices and all that. But this is all taken care of by the software. You don't have to worry about that anymore. It's made it a lot easier. The one thing you might want to pay attention to is your video bitrate. If you got spotty internet access, you're going to have to reduce this down a little bit. So I've seen people reduce it down as low as 2,000. If you have to get it lower than 2,000, you might want to move to a location that has better internet service. That's what it boils down to. But yeah, so these are all the different settings. And again, there's nothing here that's drastically different. I mean, this is all effectively the same as any other platform. If you're familiar with streaming from OBS from Windows or Mac, this is nothing new. Everything here is identical to what you would have to configure on the other platforms. Now we're gonna go through some caveats. Do I want to? No, don't want to save changes, just in case. All right, we're gonna bring that down to get the stream section. Let's get it calm down a little bit. Now I have Steam already loaded. Steam is available for Linux, so it's very easy to get and set up. And once you do have it set up, you use it just like any other, um, on any other platform. Nice thing is that Steam will filter games. So, I have my library of games, about a third of which I've actually played. My secret shame. That's not so secret. Um, and these will just filter these games down to the games that are playable on Linux. And there's quite a few of them. We're going to play Kerbal Space Program because I just downloaded and installed it before the stream. Now, when we load it, we're going to notice something that's a little bit off. And when the game loads up, we'll see what that is. It should load up here momentarily. Now, right now, you're either not hearing any audio, or if you are hearing audio, it's probably very distant. That's because it's coming out through my laptop my laptop speakers right now. Remember what I said earlier? Is by default, Linux is going to pick your primary audio device for any new programs that load up. And since I just installed this game, the default audio device is going to go to my uh, laptop speakers. I have Stream configured to listen to the audio coming from my headphones, so you're not going to hear that music going through my laptop speakers because Steam is not listening to that output device. So we got to do a little change. And this is that tool that I brought up earlier. Let's actually make sure I didn't already close that. Okay, I didn't. All right. So let's go back into here. Remember I mentioned Pulse Audio? I'm going to bring that up again. Might have to see here. Now sometimes you get like these weird names for some of these apps and all that. That I believe is in fact this, because you can kind of tell. Yeah, there's audio coming out through this. You know that this is the thing that's outputting the game, so you just have to kind of listen for it. There we go. Yep, that was the right one. That's all I had to do, was just go into there and make sure that it was outputted. Now, this might actually apply to any additional games. So, but if you do notice that it's coming through your speakers, go into Pulse Audio, change the output here, find the application that's actually outputting music or sounds into your desktop speaker, and change this to your headset. And not only can you hear it through your headset now, but it's also going to be available to be listened to on the stream. So you can now hear the music on the stream. I'm going to turn this down just a touch here. There, audio, because it is a little loud. You know what we're going to do? We're just going to turn the music down a touch. I want it kind of in the background, so, but alright, so yeah, we're just gonna hit accept. Alright, now I'm gonna keep the game running because I wanted to demonstrate something else here as well too. So right now we're still looking at my desktop, and this game, for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna keep it at its current window size. Linux does have the ability to display games in full screen mode, and if that's the case and you don't really have to worry about it, you can still keep it in desktop mode. Or your stream in desktop mode. So note here, this is my desktop and it's set to record whatever appears on a monitor. Downside of that is, like, for example, I can see the window dressing around the game, I can see my toolbar, I can see any background stuff that's going on if this is a maximize. We're going to want to go ahead and select a window. So we're going to go ahead. Properties. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add, and we're gonna do a window capture, and we're just gonna call this game screen. Alright, now immediately it's going to pop up with a window and say properties for game screen. This might throw you off a little bit because it'll pick like the first thing that loaded up when you loaded up your desktop, and it's going to be the panel here. Then this panel in the very bottom here is like the first application that loads up whenever you load up X Windows. We're going to change that. Kerbal Space Program. Don't worry about the fact that it's all black. We will see that the game will become visible when we switch back. And so there's the usual crop top, bottom, left, right, those sorts of things. Lock X server when capturing. Let's try that, see what that looks like. Alright. Oh, also I need to remember to disable my desktop. Okay, now you can see my game, but of course, you know, it doesn't look very good because it's kind of like... yeah, so we want to change that. So we want to go ahead, transform. Fit the screen. Boom. Alright, there we go. Now, of course, like the usual caveats apply. Oh no, now we covered up my camera. Well, that's easy enough to fix. Boom. Alright, hey, now we can see my camera, and now we can see the game. If I move around on my desktop, I think what'll end up happening is that the game will freeze up when you move your desktop to another screen, but it'll still display. So it'll just basically lock in place until you go back to your screen, and you load up your game again, and then it'll start updating again the display. Now I'm going to try something here because there was that one option. I'm not sure what it does. Include lock X server when capturing. Yeah, so I think that didn't do anything. Okay. We'll go ahead and disable that then. Alright, so that is nice because then like, you know, so if you're like me and you have like a multi-desktop environment, we have multiple virtual desktops and you like to switch around between your browser to look up some games or all that, it will freeze the game up as far as the stream is concerned. The game's still running in the background, but the OBS software will stop receiving updates, and then you won't actually see the game updating while it's on the screen. So it might run into the issue, like especially if you got like a game that's like running in the background and you want to like go to your web browser and look up something. Just keep that in mind, that the game screen will freeze up, at least according to the stream, when you go to another window. I go back here. Yeah, every time I move in and out of that window, it freezes up when I'm out of that window, and when I go back to it, then it updates. So, just something you want to keep in mind. One last thing. So, let's... Where is that? .cache.config. It wasn't DMRC, was it? Nope. That was... Excuse me here while I'm trying to find this out. That's a directory. That's definitely not it. Oh, I know what it is. .als. Yes, okay. So this is a Linux caveat, and this will impact your stream, so you want to remember to do this. And it took me a while to find this out. Some games, notably Minecraft, do not use the most recent updated drivers to output their sound. I think it has something to do with the fact that Minecraft is built on Java. Minecraft, I think, is using the older ALSA drivers to outputs, which there is a compatibility later so that it works with, you know, Pulse Audio, which is the newer audio drivers. But there's something that you have to do. Remember when I said when you start up your game, the first time you start it up, you're going to want to go into Pulse Audio and select... Oops, wrong guy. Yeah, go ahead and select, you know, a different audio source so that it goes to your headset, for example. If you do not have this option set in your .also FTRC file, and this is really weird, it took me a while to find this, and have these two lines here, allow moves equals yes. What will happen is if you go into here and you try to select your headset, it'll just go immediately back to the desktop. Because of the way that ALSA and Pulse Audio interact with each other. Like I said, this doesn't happen very often, and you don't run into this very often, but it does happen when you play Minecraft on Linux, and that is like one of those weird exceptions that's going to hit like more than one streamer, especially if they like streaming from Linux. And so that's just something you want to kind of keep in mind. If you don't have that option in there, you won't be able to change for some games or some audio sources your audio output source. When you do make this change, you can just you can just log out and log back in. There's a command you can do to kill the Pulse Audio daemon, and that'll reread that file, and then it'll work. But other than that, you know, or you can, you know, reboot or just, you know, log out, log back in. so that'll automatically restart the process as well too. Just so the only reason is it needs to reread this configuration file in order for the change to take effect, and then you can go in and change your source. If you're streaming at the time, you're going to have to interrupt your stream, unfortunately. So that's a caveat. Just want to make sure that you might be able to do a search for allow moves equals yes, or even this weird file ALSOFTRC. One of those, if you Google those, will probably tell you how to do this, if in case you forget, or if you can't really see what I'm doing here in the stream. So that's just something you want to keep in mind. Other than that, really, I didn't want to like go through the how to stream from start to finish, because there's other tutorials out there that are much better at doing that sort of thing than I am. I just wanted to do just basically like, well, okay, let's assume that you do know how to use OBS, at least like on Windows or Mac. Here are the gotchas that you gotta worry about when you're doing your stream from Linux as well. And like I said, 90% of it is the same as every platform. It's just those little details like the audio drivers and the settings and the little utilities, the system utilities that you got to use to make sure everything's configured correctly. That's where the devils in the details are. So you just want to kind of keep those in mind. And if once you do that, your streaming experience should be smooth and without issues. Well, thank you for watching. I'm going to go ahead and upload this video to YouTube as well too, so you'll be able to see it there. I'm going to probably do another video on how to stream to YouTube and related services, because that's a little bit different from streaming to Twitch. There's different encoding. There's actually a different place that you upload to. So there are some places. Linux and YouTube don't really play well with each other, so you have to have an intermediary service to do your streaming to YouTube. Usually that's a restream.io, but outside of that, it's more or less the same as what we saw here. So I'll probably save that for another video. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I'm probably going to go ahead and start up an actual gaming stream later on from Linux, and we'll keep on going from there. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.